Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Survivor 50 Wishlist Podcast, the off-season Survivor podcast series where we are determining who could and should be coming back to the beach for Survivor 50. My name is Mike Bloom, back for our second podcast in this absolute monolith of a series as we are going season by season trying to winnow down candidates for an eventual fan vote to determine your cast out there for the upcoming season of Survivor 50. Right now, we're taking the proverbial jump off of the rock and entering the waters of Survivor, the Australian Outback. And there is nobody I would want to do this with more than my co-host for today. I just got to introduce them. I won't even do any sort of gussing up or long introductions because I'm just too excited the fact that we get Josh Wigler back on the podcast talking Survivor.
Hey, what's up? It's me, Josh Wigler, and if you don't know who I am, I'm like the old retired Survivor press corps member. I'm like the Roger Bingham of the Survivor. Just call me Kentucky Josh.
Yeah, we call you Long Island Josh.
Long Island Josh. Yeah, that's me. It's Long Island Josh. Mike Bloom. Oh my God. Very excited to be here right now.
Oh my goodness. Here we are. Of course, you and I have been talking about a very different type of island for a long, long time. Of course, when you left the Survivor beat, you have been covering everything scripted and perhaps might be continuing to do so in a different fashion on RHAP. But now we're not even going back to an island. We have to go out back.
We have to go out back.
Yeah, as we're talking about the second season of Survivor. I'm so excited when we reached out to podcasters to do this. I had hoped that you would want to, and especially I hoped you would want to do the Australian Outback, considering this is a very special season to you, no?
This was the very first season of Survivor I watched in its entirety live while it was airing. The first episode that I ever saw was the Borneo finale. And I was hooked and felt like I'd missed out on a whole thing and I wasn't going to miss out again on the Australian Outback. So I went through the full journey. And if you go back and you listen to The Evolution of Strategy, which is the audiobook Rob and I co-authored going through the first 30 seasons of the show, vote by vote, you'll recall if you've listened to that recently, and if you haven't, to set it up, I think it's the end of the first chapter of the 30 chapter, 300 plus hour evolution of strategy, where I say, well, this next chapter, season 2, I think is the best season of the show. And if you look at the timestamp on that, I just want to this is what?
Yeah.
This is, I think summer 2014 is when that's recorded. So just want to put that out there.
When optimism in Survivor Australia was an all-time high in terms of timestamp.
Let the timestamp, dig back through the archives, and I'm sure I say all sorts of terrible stuff. But some of my takes on Australian Outback from TEOS, especially when I think about people listening to that now, I'm like, I don't know how well that aged. But I can tell you that in my heart of hearts, this was the beginning of an obsession for me. And I'm very excited to talk about it because I am feeling as fired up about Survivor as I have felt in the 5 years since I stopped talking about it, because the allure of season 50 is pretty cool. And I really like that Jeff is not playing it cool where it's it's season 30, but it's just season 30. It's season 50. It's not just season 50. It's season frackin' 50. And I'm excited for it. So as you dig into it, Mike, I'm ready to start digging into it a little bit myself.
Yeah, so for those that either missed out on the first podcast I did with Rob in this series or perhaps forgot over the course of the weekend, basically this entire experiment is that every podcast, we are going season by season, myself and a guest, and we are talking through the cast of this season to determine a short list of, if you will, Josh, candidates. We will scroll them on the side of a cave, and those people...
Does that mean we can't kill any of them?
Well, I think I can't. I think you and the guests can. I think I am the Jacob at this
Got
instance.
it. Okay.
But then what will happen is at the end of all this, after all 46 seasons, we'll then have a big fan vote with all these shortlist people in one big pool. They'll vote upon probably the 100 plus people in that pool and determine a fan voted cast of 20. it's, a fun exercise to do, but also at the same time, maybe we're hoping that the eyes in the sky will have their eye on what we're doing here to see maybe some people that we as a community are interested in seeing back on Survivor.
Yeah, Mike, have you gone on record with what you want Survivor 50 even to be?
I mean, I am really I think that the casting in the new era is far and away the
Not to
strongest part of it.
distract us and to push
Of
us
course.
past the 50-minute time limit or
I mean, what would
anything,
be a
but
podcast, Josh, that you and I did without us
I've
pushing past
listened
the
to
time
you
limit?
tell Rob, and these podcasts will be 50 minutes long, and suddenly in my mind, a certain alarm bell started ringing.
Yeah, klaxon went off, and then the certain red hieroglyphs showed up.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, I personally think that the new era casting is so incredibly strong that I would be fine with an old school versus new school. I don't think this will
Where's the
reflect.
line on old school versus new
I think it
school?
would be pre 40 versus 40 plus.
Jeez.
I mean, there's if we're doing 10v10, here's the thing is that I personally, and this will not show in the people that I vote forward, as maybe this will show today. I personally don't need to see like the legends back for their umpteen time, especially
Wow.
because Winners at War felt like such a coda for a lot of them with the show. And I would rather see sort of like the one and done players from the pre new era come back versus some new era players. I don't know if 50 necessarily needs to be like quote unquote legends in their own way. Again, that will not reflect in the people that I'm putting forward because I am a weird person, to put it minimally. And so that's how I personally would like to see it, just because I feel like we have such a rich depository of so many Survivor contestants that haven't had those opportunities to come back from both the old era and new era perspective.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm there, but I also feel like it's season 50. I feel like maybe you had to earn a legendary spot. So I'm of a couple of different minds. It'll be fun to talk through using the second season of the show as an example, because while they are not the Beatles, I think it would be a disservice to call the cast of the Australian Outback in relation to the Borneo cast Wings. Like they're more
Oh,
famous than Wings. I'm
yeah.
saying like it's not just Paul's next thing. They're like the Stones. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say the Stones was actually the closest comparison I would make. Where like they obviously get compared a lot to the Borneo cast. They have more longevity, I would say. It's as much as I'm talking about like, well, I don't want to see maybe umpteenth returnees on. This is the cast that features, I believe, the most returnees
but
in
some of
it.
these people I'd like to see, like Mick Jagger or Keith Richards. Like, how are you still doing this?
Yeah,
Keith Amy
exactly.
Richards, you know?
I mean, to your point, this is the season that has by far the most eyes on it. It's only the one of two premieres to air after the Super Bowl. The attention span on Survivor was white hot, like the sands next to the Herbert River. And so we are going to get into it all, talking through who could and feasibly should be on a list. So we'll see. We talked about this with Rob. I think we'll try to incorporate a bit of like who do we want to see versus who would want to come back versus who production would like to see come back. We try to create a bit of a suspension of disbelief while also at the same time maybe incorporating some realism in there as well.
Okay, well, we'll see. Yeah. Rob broke all sorts of rules last time, and it was only the first episode. So who knows what's about to happen now?
Well, one rule you can all follow is to make sure you subscribe at robhasawebsite.com/survivor feed. That's where you're going to find all of these podcasts in audio form, which are dropping on a week daily basis at 6 a.m. and video versions, which you can subscribe to at robhasawebsite.com/YouTube, will be dropping at 10 a.m. every weekday, except for weekends and holidays. But let's not tarry any further, Josh. Let's get into the
I'm
cast of
done tarrying. I've
yeah,
been tarrying for long enough.
your Terry phase is done. You're in your untarrying era.
Yeah.
Your Terra, if you
Now I'm
will.
just full on Dietzen.
There we go. Big and long
Let's
is
just
Josh Wigler.
Dietz. Let's Dietz it.
Well, let's get into the deets with some of these contestants. And we're going to start from the top down. We're going to work through in specific groups of people. Let's start with the two that stood at the end of it all. The Constellation versus the man from the Lone Star State. It is Tina and Colby, both of whom have come back 3 times, both of whom were voted out pre-merge in Survivor All-Stars and then finished in the finales of their respective seasons. Josh, it's been a long time since we've seen either one of them.
Yeah. So for the video version, Mike has pulled up the original cast photos of these contestants. And, these days, like whether it's the great Robert Voets or several of the other people who work behind the scenes getting those cast photos your way, they're typically on the Fijian beach,
Yep.
right?
On
Like there's
location.
tropical location part of it. I think one exception may be the Survivor Millennials versus Gen X cast. I
Well, I
think.
think they didn't even get pictures. They pretty much just did action shots of
Yeah,
them at.
because they had a really rainy day when that was supposed to happen, so they did all sorts of like green screeny things. I think that looked horrible, so they just got action shots. I'm pretty sure that's how that worked out. In any event, we're looking at Tina and Colby from their cast photos, and I suppose I had forgotten how in that original run, because this is definitely for Africa as well, for Marquesas, if I'm not mistaken.
Pearl Islands, most infamously, I have blazed in my mind like the blue and orange backgrounds.
It's like they made the survivors pose for yearbook photos.
Oh yeah, it's like the Touch Life Studio that you get, right? The photos where you're like, okay, pick the green background, the purple background, the blue background.
Yeah. And I guess aging to me, Mike, is that I look at the photo of Colby specifically and I'm like looking at them like, oh, that could have been in my senior yearbook. And so like that feels bad.
I mean,
First and
a good
foremost.
senior quote would have been, I only know how to do things one way, and that's full tilt.
That's full tilt. Well, I only know how to do things one way, Mike Bloom. That is also full tilt. And I think the thing about Survivor, the Australian Outback, especially for this exercise, Mike, and I'm trying to find a way to phrase this that doesn't rob too much drama out of my participation in this
Ooh.
podcast. But my feeling is you go back to this season, and is this not one of the ones where you would want to summon the legends? Like, I feel like if you're going to touch the Australian Outback, with great respect to
you have to touch it with some gloves, I think, looking back in retrospect. I would say
some
kid
of these
gloves, but that is not a good phrase to use.
some of these legends are contaminated, irradiated, and should not be approached even with full PPE. You want to stay away from some of these legends. I think that there are certainly some within like the Survivor hallowed halls of fame that feel like you ask should and could, I think will get a call. And I think that list for me, even thinking about the Borneo people, the very first sort of like obvious cause, it's one of two, but one of them is here right now, is Colby. I think Colby we haven't seen since Heroes versus Villains.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that completes a really great arc between him and Jerry. But I know that
was nice to see.
Wasn't that one of like the great Survivor love stories of that period of time, at least? And the story arc between those two, specifically reaching some measure of peace by the end of it. Wasn't that just such a satisfying arc? And if we're still making this show going into its 50th season, does that arc have to be over? Or much like everything else that happens nowadays, could it get rebooted?
Yeah, I mean, Colby has had 3 wildly different seasons, and I think people forget, like, he's the original challenge beast. He's the one that set a record that has still not been broken with 5 individual immunity wins in Survivor history. He's also an incredibly fun character. Like, his confessionals are so much gold between, of course, I ate no Hershey bar, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Even going back to Heroes versus Villains, his infamous, like, 30-second pregnant pause confessional of like, damn, I near fooled myself, as he talks about him sort of being on his last legs. Obviously, he has probably, despite the fact that he doesn't have his worst placement, probably his worst season in Heroes versus Villains. That really started with him getting frog marched by Coach, being called Superman in a fat suit, even sort of having a bit of a public breakup with Jeff Probst over not wanting to eat a piece of chocolate before a challenge that he ends up sitting out. That would be sort of my sticking point. And Rob talked about this as well, as the difference, I think, between Tina and Colby, and we'll talk about Tina. I think Tina, if I'm coming forward with like a choose your champion for this season, it'll be Tina, because Tina was a close call to actually almost returning for Survivor a little while ago. Colby very much expressed in the moment after Heroes versus Villains that it was way too restricting of an environment for him. That, he was asking Candace who these people were. He was not happy that he couldn't just wander off and do whatever he wanted to and explore nature, that he was kind of fenced in multiple ways in this season. I don't know if Colby's experience in reality TV now hosting Top Shot, the late great show, as well as I think Top Chopper. Like there was a Butcher
Oh
reality
yeah,
show
he
that he was
did.
a part
Yeah,
of.
I believe it was called The Butcher.
Oh,
Yeah, straight up.
listen, says is what it says on the tin, much like mystery meat
Yeah.
proper. So I don't know if that would necessarily, I don't know, put more fire under Colby to be like, oh, I want to come back to reality TV, or if he's like, I've seen too much of, for lack of a better term, how the sausage gets made. I don't know if I want to do this again.
Yeah, but I think like it's been a long time since heroes versus villains, and like the expectations on Colby, I think, would be different now. But I think at least in terms of like, I think it comes down to this, I guess, is what I would say. You could say this about Colleen, you could say this
Mhm.
about Greg, that those are people that like if they wanted to come back, like you would think that the ball is more in their court than not. I think even of those three, like Colby feels to me like such a Jeff Probst favorite that
Mm.
when Jeff imagines in his mind's eye what does a 50th legendary season of Survivor have to include, Colby, his like original Survivor crush, you would think would be very, very high on the list. It's like Colby now has that John Dutton, Kevin Costner, Yellowstone upside.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
interesting. Could he be cast and everyone's like, oh, is Yellowstone merging with
they're going to
Survivor?
put Colby back on the map, and then Colby's going to have a huge like Silver Fox era
Will there
on
be a new wave of babies named after
on
Colby?
Paramount Plus. Yes, Sherry's baby Colby's going to
Yeah.
have a baby named Colby.
Colby
And
Jr.,
Colby
CJ?
2 or 3, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Colby will like do just fine enough to be a personality and a confessional machine, and then will like him and his ranch will get a Paramount Plus reality show. Like that's the future
Top
I
Ranch.
see. Yeah, Top Ranch for Colby. But no, I think if Colby wanted to go back, he goes back. Like this is a ball in your court sort of situation. I feel
Yeah.
very strongly that Colby could just, will himself back onto Survivor if he wanted to. Whether he wants to or not is a totally different story. But I imagine Jeff would be thrilled to have him back.
Well, let's bat the ball to the person that was Colby's victor, the one that he mistakenly took to the final two here in Tina, who was, one challenge away, Josh. People might not remember from becoming the second two-time winner in Survivor history. She does get voted off in Blood versus Water, but does come back via Redemption Island, does make her way to the final four, was the final person voted out there. I would love to see a Tina 4.0. It doesn't even feel like a 4.0 because she barely was in Survivor All-Stars to begin with. She was the first person voted out there. And even in Blood versus Water, she has sort of the extra wrinkle of having to play alongside her daughter. And so I think getting Tina to play sort of, I wouldn't say unfettered, with no offense to Katie, but I think really independently for the first time since her first season would be really interesting. A lot has also happened in Tina's life. Tragically, I think the week of the Blood versus Water finale, she lost her son in a car accident. And I'm assuming it's just been a really grieving process since. Not to mention, as I mentioned before, Tina was in talks to come back for Winners at War. She had been contacted. There was a lot of conversation about it. For whatever reason, they chose to go in a different direction at the last second. I feel like we can't let that door close again.
Well, that piece of it makes me wonder if not that the door is closed, but if it's not in a rush to be opened with Tina. The fact that if you were going to get Tina back, Winners at War feels like such an easy, like she would be the earliest winner that they would have had, first woman to win the game. And they didn't bring her back for that, but they brought her back recently enough for Blood versus Water. And I don't believe I was doing any press at that time, but
I think it was right on the cusp.
it was right. The
Starting.
next season is Kagian. That's where I really started after a little bit of a break from One World. And so it wasn't for that, but I think it was for First One Out. I spoke with Tina because I wanted to get the perspective of the people who'd been voted out first for that podcast series. And so Tina, as you mentioned, is knocked out of All Stars first. And I hope that I feel like I said this to her. I hope that I said this to her. I'm sure that I said this on the Evolution of Strategy, that Tina has one of the fullest Survivor experiences you could possibly get.
Yeah.
She wins. She goes home first. So she goes from first to worst. Then she comes back, gets like in that merge zone and gets knocked out. So understands what it's like to lose and having a majority, get knocked in a blindside of the minority, wins a Redemption Island, comes back that way, is participating on a blood versus water, and then gets that fallen angel spot, that like
Yeah.
really legendary right there at the gate, that if she had walked through, to your point, I do agree. I think she wins that season of Survivor very likely. So she has had a really complete set as far as a Survivor player, that I don't know what more there is to see or do with Tina, other than she is so sneakily great at
She
this
really is.
game
That's the
that it
thing is,
would just be fun to see. I would love to see it. I don't know that it's like on my very top of the list of this cast, but close for
yeah.
sure.
I think if there are winners to bring back, I mean, there was obviously a fair amount of people that were left off of that. Certainly ones that we will get to later on in this series. And Tina, to your point, is like, I don't know, underratedly good at this game, in my opinion. The way that we hear after the fact, the way that she was kind of able to subtly manipulate a lot of stuff in Australian Outback. Obviously, she is the one that kind of helps push one of these first big flips that we've seen in the game, where she, Colby, and Keith are able to turn on Amber, Jerry, and Mitchell and completely flip and then make the final three together. The fact that apparently, Tina was really pushing this narrative of like, remember, they hated the winner last time, so we should be the good guys this time. And that sort of led Colby to vote out Keith and take Tina to the end, which was ultimately a losing move. She is like very crafty, in my opinion. And so, yes, some stuff we'll be talking about with these seasons are a little bit of this fish out of water context of like, if you tell Tina what a knowledge is power is, she probably would have no idea what you're talking about. At the same
If you
time,
told me what a knowledge is power is, I might not know what you're talking
exactly. You're
about.
in the same boat there. But I do think that she has sort of like what Rob and I were talking about with Jenna Lewis, like a base set of skills that I think could apply to the game of Survivor, no matter what era she's playing in.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I think she'd be, I would never be mad to see Tina play Survivor.
All right, well, let's move into our jury for Survivor the Australian Outback.
Look at these people. Look at their yearbook photos.
Ah, they're so good here. I love Nick with the sort of
Nick,
layered
yeah,
button-down shirt with the
Nick's got like
t-shirt.
his elbow on his knee. He looks
Roger getting a
great.
shirt from Dan Flashes.
Yeah, Roger went to Dan Flash's. Their clothes are exactly his style.
All right, well, let's go over everyone. Maybe not their outfits. That'll be for another podcast. In reverse finish order, we have Keith Famey, Elizabeth Filarski, but now Hasselback of the aforementioned Kentucky Joe, Roger, Amber, then Burkich, now Mariano, more famously the winner of Survivor All-Stars, Nick Brown, Jerry Manthe, and of course, Alicia Calloway. So, Josh, I'll go back to what you said before. By your logic, should we see a Jerry 4.0?
Yeah, so my feeling is you could just take two people from Survivor the Australian Outback for a 50th season, and it would be Colby and Jerry. That their dynamic in that season is so centrally located in the viewer's experience. She is painted as the Black Widow. I think a 2024 view of Survivor the Australian Outback might play that differently. And what would that look like with her playing now versus Colby? She obviously had sort of, over the years, like her intense experience with the fandom and the public and everything like that. And I don't know where Jerry is at now in terms of all of this, but I kind of feel like she would do it, but I'm basing that on nothing, absolutely nothing.
I mean, we're throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. I agree. I do recall that I don't think Jerry has explicitly said if she'd do something or not, but she has been very Survivor friendly. Like, this is very random, but I feel like she did like a promo for a season of Survivor Quebec that started airing a couple of years ago. So there is a Survivor up in Montreal, French language version that started airing a couple, like, professionally produced and everything. And I think Jerry did a promo.
She did a promo for Survivor Quebec?
I think so. I might be speaking out of my ass here, but I'm pretty sure that was the case.
What would she have been doing
I'm assuming speaking French.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I think Jerry is someone that like stays in the discourse. So to your point, I think if she did not come back for Heroes versus Villains, that moment where she gives this plea, which again I think pings a lot better in retrospect than it did in 2004, of like, we're people, please stop treating us like we're TV characters.
Hashtag Jerry was right. Like Jerry was right all along. It was Jerry all along.
So the fact that she did come back for another season, though, I think goes to show that like she felt okay with the show. Where I would contest is sort of what you just brought up with Tina, where Jerry has a very interesting 3-season arc where, like you said, she becomes really the most like hated person on her season, let alone her tribe, to the point where they stop a pagonging. They say, we got to vote out Jerry right here, right now. She goes in 8th place. She comes back the next season, still has a bit of a bad time, but does end up getting her revenge on Colby. That's the bellhop packing your bags. And then she goes from one of the biggest villains in Survivor history to, like, I wouldn't say necessarily finishing a hero, but having this sort of big resolution to her story, right? That, like, she made good with Colby off camera. She definitely proved herself as a player. She won immunity for the first time. She made it to the final 4, where she is a fallen angel. I would sort of ascribe what you described to Tina to Jerry of, like, I don't know what a Jerry 4.0 would look like, but I also love Jerry with her frankness. And now she would sort of have that silver fox quality to her as well, I believe, if recent photos are an indicator, that it would just be great to see her back.
I would love to see Jerry back. I think it would be really fun to see Jerry back, independent of anything else. But I think in the context of Jerry and Colby, if we're just like digging into the soil from which Survivor grew, I think that these are the first two I think that this is the first really gettable, iconic pair. Like Greg and Colleen would be incredible. And I would upvote that over Colby and Jerry personally, because we would have never seen it before. It's the very first season. It would feel really electrifying and special. And I think you could do that instead of Colby and Jerry. But short of that, I think before you go to any one person on Borneo and you want to find like some sort of metaphorical Adam and Eve of Survivor, I think Colby and Jerry get tapped.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of the Bible was when Eve asked Adam, like, hey, yeah, we're going to go on a date right now with the Garden of Eden. And Adam's like, God damn it. Yeah. And he just kind of, and he's the one who actually takes the apple from the tree and the government finds him for it afterwards.
Yeah, there's something to, there's some sort of joke about chocolate covered ribs, but I can't quite get there right now.
So, and someone else that we need to talk about who I think would be someone that would feasibly get brought back, were it not for the fact that her career has far superseded Survivor.
Elizabeth.
Is, of course, Elizabeth, yes, who was able to parlay this into, of course, a hosting spot on The View, and then obviously a role on Fox as well, where I think she has expressed, even in the moment, she was one of the people that was allegedly contacted for All Stars, turned it down, and that's, you know, rumor-based how Amber ended up getting on Survivor All Stars, where people like Elizabeth and Colleen said no at the time. I think Elizabeth is not necessarily looking back at her Survivor experience in the way that Colleen did, even in 2004, but it's safe to say she has it in the rearview mirror at this point.
Yeah, I think by the time that this season would be airing, she's pushing 50, so she's even further away from this experience in her life.
Hey, we're pushing 50 as well. That should be the name of the podcast series.
That's right. Pushing 50 is pretty good. You know, this is tricky. Get on the graphics. Let's reverse this. I feel like the further away she gets from Survivor, the more and more her other major life experiences probably piles up, both for her as well as, you know, for my personal you know, desire to see her play. But I also do think that she is on that list of people that she gets called and asked just because what if she wants to do it. So if Elizabeth wanted to do it, Elizabeth gets on. I don't have anything to base this on because I don't really follow her story anymore. Other than
why, Josh?
Other than what you get in drips and drabs, like she doesn't seem like she wants this, right?
No, and her life is fine.
And like she like exploded out there, like she like everybody.
She exploded against a former Survivor reunion host, Rosie O'Donnell, memorably.
You know, so I feel like I don't think it's likely to happen. I have a hard time imagining it.
Not to mention, I mean, Survivor the Australian Outback had it rough. At one point, Jeff had to come in and like trade them rice for, you know, their tarp, essentially, that nearly got washed away in a flood. Elizabeth had a very tough time. There was tough stuff about how she had to get like IVs fed to her towards the end of the game. She was losing her hair. And Josh, Jeff Probst recently said that the new era of Survivor is even tougher than the old era. So I don't know if that's something Elizabeth would willingly sign up for.
Come on. Come on.
Well, let's talk about someone who did. Let's talk about someone who did replace her on All Stars and has $1 million and a marriage to show from it. Amber.
Yes. What do you think? Are we lighting Amber's embers here? Do we think she just came back?
She just came back, and look, I think the concept was great. That it was it was a full winter season. Let's bring her back. It's been a full 32 seasons since we had seen her. I think she's currently tied with Ethan for the longest break in between return appearances. That being said, she got voted out second because of her connection to Boston Rob, and she hung out on the edge of extinction for most of this season. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm clamoring for an Amber 4.0, as much as, not to put the cart before the horse, but I would expect there's a very fair chance that Boston Rob will show up in this fan survey. It would be fun to put Amber on as well, but I don't necessarily see A, if she would want to do it again, and B, if this is something that people are needing to see in terms of unfulfilled potential.
Yeah, I think it happened on 40. And I think like the shot was to do better than she did on 40. And I think going into it, I would have thought that she had a really good shot there. And then like my read for all of that was so off. But like I think like she would strike you as one of those people who has, it's been so long since she's played, and like yes, she could have like tons of secrets up her sleeve. She beat Boston Rob. She has seen her husband play. They've probably talked about this type of stuff before. Like she is an expert already, and she's got that experience too. And it didn't really come to bear when she came back. And I think that like the story of her and Rob playing together, like that's also kind of done. I feel like. I think you have like one
Yeah.
sort of real go at that. But, we are bringing like, the Boston Rob factor into this. I guess like it is another iconic pair, obviously. So if 50 is some kind of like more like Hall of Fame type of idea, I do think that that could get some play, but I'm not terribly interested in seeing her play a fourth time.
Just quickly rounding up the rest of the jury here: Keith, Roger, Nick, Alicia. I think Alicia would be the one I'd see the most appeal in. Of course, I will always wave my finger in your face is one of the most iconic quotes of the first handful of seasons. But almost like Amber, I kind of feel like we saw what we need to see out of Alicia in All Stars.
I'd be really interested to see Alicia now.
Oh, really?
I would. I don't expect it, but
Hmm.
I would be very interested to see how she plays now. Where I think like back then when she got on for All Stars, I think there was some like, oh, really, Alicia got on here, and like you go back and you watch her stuff in this season, and like, yeah, she's an icon. What is Alicia? What is Alicia 3.0 like all of these years later? I'm interested. I would like to see whose faces get her finger wagged into front of.
Well, that's the thing, is that, listen, for keeping up with Survivor 46 discourse, there's been a lot of finger waving going on. For what it's worth, I just looked up her quarantine questionnaire, and when asked, would you play again if asked, she said, not likely. I'm all about moving forward, trying new things, and taking on new challenges.
So Alicia.
Twice is enough for me.
That's so Alicia. I can hear her delivering that answer. I would love to hear her delivering confessionals again.
Yes. So I
Alicia
think,
would be fun to see, but I don't expect so. That
yeah,
sounds like a pretty definitive answer.
unfortunately, to her chances, we're going to have to say arrivederci, sayonara, or as we say in my neck of the woods, see you later.
See you later.
But also, I'll give ups to Keith and Nick. I feel like both of them have been doing some majorly impressive things. They wouldn't come back for a Survivor season, nor do I think they'd be
Give me the
wanted.
update. What's happening with Nick? What's happening with Keith?
So I think Nick, I'm pretty sure, is he was a lawyer, of course. I think he was a law student at the time. He ended up becoming, I think, he was nominated by President Biden to be the United States Attorney for the Western District of Washington.
Oh
So he has
wow.
really ascended up in the realms of government. And Keith, I believe, has made several, not seven, Emmy-winning documentaries. I think he did a Talking with T-Bird where he really has transitioned to like photography, cinematography, etc. He's gotten out of the kitchen.
Maybe Keith could get onto Survivor 50 as a camera person.
I think, well, that feel like a bit of a step down. I think
He could help film it.
he could certainly help film it, chip in, but I don't know. He might have to get like an escalated pay for that. He'd be like, "Don't you know who I am?" I think
Yeah.
also maybe they could involve Keith, where they infamously don't give rice to the new era contestants. Could they do something where like they offer a
Cooking
rice?
school with Keith, and
No,
Keith
they
comes in and
they
teaches them how to cook.
well, I think the irony is that they offer them rice, but Keith makes the rice and he
Right.
destroys it all. He
It's
burns
all
it.
it's all goo
Yeah, and so
rice.
Jerry's like, "Fine, I'll make the tortillas again."
Yeah. I would be really psyched to see Nick Brown. When I close my eyes and I think of like stark visuals from the hallowed halls of Survivor, One that really comes to mind is when Nick wins that balance challenge
To pull the
against.
rope on the crates.
Yes. And he's just taking everyone down, and the look of confidence on his face and the way he just like casts the line out. That's one of my favorite challenge performances across all of Survivor. Nick is really obscure. I don't think it's going to happen, and it sounds like he's doing a lot of incredible things outside of all of this. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I love Nick Brown. Did not have talking about Nick Brown on a podcast on my 2024 bingo card. So this is great. This is why I'm excited for Survivor 50, because you get to talk about all these people.
Well, let's move on to people maybe we're not excited to talk about.
We didn't talk about Roger. You wouldn't want Roger back?
I mean, I'd love Roger back. I think Roger is considerably older at
He'd
this
be,
point.
I think by the time that it would be filming or airing, he'd be almost 80.
Yeah.
So old enough to be president, but maybe too old to play Survivor.
Also, listen, I was a great moment in the first reward challenge where he jumps off the rock, but I feel like nowadays Survivor players would like castrate him for that, right? Like, we gotta get him out. He's not swimming in these challenges. He's dragging us down.
Yeah, I don't need to see that.
All right, Josh, shall we traipse into the BOMA? I know we're talking about Survivor tomorrow, but like, the Survivor, the Australian Outback pre-emerge.
Wow, we really are going to finish this podcast within 50 minutes because I have about 30 seconds worth of material here.
I would say let's ignore the top row for those that are watching along. If you know, you know. Otherwise, we can talk about a select few from this. Perhaps specifically Mitchell Olsen, Marilyn Mad Dog Hershey, Kel Gleason. Josh, I really feel like we missed an opportunity for a wand-off of you can call me Al, but you can call me Cal.
Yeah, I think, well, it's never too late. You never know, especially if Cal gets that call.
Which he would not, because he definitively smuggled food into Survivor.
Is this definitive? Is this answered? Is this canonical?
I believe people confirmed who were involved with the cast, like in AMAs after the fact, that Kel had indeed like.
I'm still.
And there was rumors about like
grass,
him sewing it in his clothes.
It was just
everything.
grass. When you looked at me before and you thought I was putting jerky in my mouth, it was just grass. In 2000 what? 2001.
2001.
What an incredible bullshit excuse.
I
don't know. Eating grass was like the Survivor answer to my dog ate my homework. Just like an unbelievable thing to say. And I've said this. I said this on TEOS that Kel was my initial winner's pick, my very first winner's pick.
Wow.
It came in tiers. Like Kel is the first. Then it was Jeff. Then it was Colby after Varner. And so Kel, when I like saw in like the New York Times or whatever, like the cast photos of everybody, because it was so mainstream back then, I was like, that guy, he'll win. And then he goes home second. And yeah, he really earned that, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's earned a second chance on a season like this. I think on a second chance themed season, I think Kel is a pretty funny person to put on that list.
Funny, yes, good, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Mitchell Olsen is also a very interesting one. I mean, it's tough because, he ends up going out due to this previous votes tiebreaker, due to, again, this pretty big flip in Survivor in retrospect. The only reason I think I really demonstrably remember him is because I believe to this date he is still the tallest contestant in Survivor history. He's 7 feet tall.
Wow, 7 feet.
He's the Victor Wembanyama, Josh. I know that's lost on you, but
wait, he's several feet?
There we go.
Did I do it? Did I make a Survivor reference that was not from the 30s?
There we go. The feet are wet, Josh. And oh my God,
I'm thawing out.
But yeah, Mitchell, I think, unfortunately, he also seemed to really struggle out there. I think one of the reasons why he was voted out over Amber or Jerry is that, like, he was clearly struggling with nutritional deprivation. Mad Dog, God, it, like, would be incredible. Would be, like, the absolute wild card of wild card.
This is the thing. Like, if everybody who comes on to Survivor wish list is allowed to break one rule, and I don't recommend that that's what you allow people to do, but if Rob is allowed to add 4 on the first week, like, the thing that I would add is, like, Maryland Mad Dog Hershey mandatory contestant on Survivor 50.
I mean, when Brenda tells her to take out her teeth, she'll say, like, okay, easy enough.
No problem. She loses those teeth, she'll still play. I'm ready, I believe is what she said. Yeah, I'm ready to see that constellation back on my TV screen, though I know that is unlikely. What I would really love is to go back in time and prevent Mad Dog from getting voted out where she did.
Would you like Angels in the Outfield style hold her up during the challenge where she trips and makes Okafor lose?
I don't know. I don't know how I would do it. I guess
Because
I
look, I
haven't.
think in retrospect we should probably cold some of those kuchas pre-merge.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I would change.
On that
That's
note,
it.
yeah,
That's
that's
it.
the cast of Survivor the Australian Outback, Josh. So look,
Yes.
I honestly, to your point, not a lot of dramatics involved here. I feel like we've got a good trio that we want to move forward with, right? I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think we can put confidently Tina, Colby, and Jerry on
That
the
would
list.
be where I would lean, and I would even I would go so far as to say like if it was just Colby and Jerry, I think that's really sort of Australian Outback in a nutshell.
Hmm.
Problematic people who are otherwise more iconic excluded, I think. So those would be the two that I would pass through. If it was like just like I get to choose, I would put Mad Dog through, but it's not all
Let the
on me.
record show that
Yeah.
Josh Wigler would want to put Mad Dog on the list.
Yeah, I'd be psyched about that. But yeah,
All
I
right.
think that this is going to be one of the easier seasons, I would think,
Yeah.
in terms of like who's gettable but desirable by production to Rob standards. I think that it's a small list on Australia.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think of those three, one of them feels like if they asked, would definitely go back, and that's Tina.
Hmm.
And then the question is not would Colby and Jerry get asked? I think it's would they want to say yes?
And we're living sort of in this plausible deniability vague phase where like the two of them at least are not on record saying they wouldn't. So we are leaning in the air at least of like, well, we'll put them on for now in case
Yeah.
they would want to.
Yes.
So because of their sort of lack of answer, we're gonna put them in the affirmative for right now. So yeah, Tina, Colby, and Jerry are currently in the fan vote of the slowly accumulating thing. I did this with the Raw podcast as well, Josh. I want to do this every time. One more superlative to award here. Of the 13 people, probably not of the 13, of everyone else that we've talked about, let's go with a wild card here. Someone that we would want to see on a show that's not Survivor. One of these all-star reality shows like The Challenge, The Traitors, The GOAT, etc. Who would be your pick?
Scoop in Squid Game.
For a Squid Game, for real.
Scooping, the floor is lava for real.
The one that I would put through, Josh, I think you convinced me. Put Mad Dog on the Traitors. Like,
I mean, all of this is always going to be like, who are you putting on the Traitors, right?
I mean,
that's
there's, I
sort of what it
think,
comes down
especially when we
to.
get to later seasons, especially with the more athletic people, I think there's a reason to be like, we could put them on the challenge, if you will. I think Mad Dog.
Purely for me, I would be like, okay, put Mitchell on the Masked Singer, and then like he would do his "I Will Survive."
Yeah, back from the Outback.
Yeah, but I think that would be just for me. I don't think anyone else would really care.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, no, they did have basketball players on the Masked Singer, but I'm not sure if you could build a costume that like supports all 7 feet of that man.
Yeah, they would take Mitchell's helmet off or whatever. They wear helmets, right?
I mean, sometimes they're glorified
take
helmets.
his mask off. Everybody, who's that? It's like I'm Mitchell
Yeah,
from Survivor
I just think Maryland's history in law enforcement would be very fun. Also, the Traitors tends to have some older contestants on that I think Mad Dog would be so set in her ways. Like, imagine her interrogating people at a round table. It would be incredible.
Yes, that would be really fun to see, and I think that that's probably her or Jerry. Jerry would also be great on the Traitors.
Or Alicia.
Alicia would be great on the Traitors.
I actually think if Alicia has kept up the physical regiment that she had 20 years ago, I think she could do on like not the challenge proper, but like a challenge All Stars or a challenge USA, which features more of a like considerable crop of older people. I think she could be really good in there because I think she could also. She's not afraid to scrap. Certainly, she's not afraid to get in people's faces.
Colby on another season of Top Shot.
Would they bring it back for? But would he be a contestant or the host?
He's the host.
Yeah, I mean, I actually enjoyed that show. I'm not a gun aficionado in many ways, but there were some very impressive trick shots they pulled off there.
Colby on The Butcher season 2. Bring back The Butcher.
Hashtag bring back the butcher. Maybe Colby can make a deal like, all right, I'll do season 50, but y'all got to bring back the butcher.
Yeah, so I just don't think that there are a lot of like it was iconic at the time. This season does not really stand the test of time in very many ways, to the point that like I think it's likelier that I would be in Fiji at the location of Survivor 50 than some of these people, and that's saying a lot because I'm nowhere near that. So I don't know which other shows they even go to. Elizabeth Flarsky will have whatever she wants. She'll have her own like the second view,
the rear view.
the rear view. That's right. And yeah, I think that's where it's at.
All right, so we have our three musketeers of Tina, Colby, Jerry joining the four pagongs that Rob and I determined in our first podcast of Jervis, Jenna, Greg, and Gretchen. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. in your podcast feed, 10 a.m. in your video feed, Eastern time. I'll be back tomorrow with the castaways of Survivor Africa.
Wow.
I didn't ask Rob about this, but actually, Josh, I would love to ping our guest about tomorrow's podcast. Who, in your opinion, is your chalk pick to be on the list for Survivor Africa?
Lex.
Okay.
I would want to see Lex. I'd be very excited to see that. I would, of course, be thrilled to see T-Bird. Obviously. That goes without saying. And I think Clarence.
Yeah. There we go. Well, we're about to get...
those are my three.
We will get Frank and Beans tomorrow, as myself and Jason Reed will be breaking down the cast of Survivor Africa. Again, make sure you don't miss a minute of this or the other Survivor off-season stuff we have going on. Go to robhasawebsite.com/Survivor feed to subscribe to our Survivor-only podcast feed, or robhasawebsite.com/subscribe to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where I'm sure y'all are leaving us plenty of comments at this point about what we got right, what we got wrong. It's all in the spirit of fun. We're having a good time. We're trying to build out a very fun fan vote at the end of this, and I hope people are enjoying it. Josh, I know I certainly did today.
I had a great time talking Survivor with you, Mike. It's been too long.
It's been too long, but it might not be too long, Josh, before, we're hearing you on podcasts again. Is there anything you'd like to plug or tease social media wise?
All I will say is post-show recaps is over, but scripted TV coverage on RHAP is just getting started in a little while here. So you will not have to navigate away too far. If you're subscribed to RHAP, you will hear from me and others on the scripted TV front before too much terribly longer. And if you would like to be subscribed to that original post-show recaps feed as well, that's going to undergo an RHAP transformation soon as well. So some really fun stuff. I haven't been so on the microphone, but I've been very much off mic working. So hope to have some fun stuff to share with you all soon. And I hope you all dig it.
And the first scripted thing you will cover is, of course, Colby in Red Eye, I imagine.
Yeah. Cillian Murphy's hot right now.
Yeah. It's Colby shared screen with a recent Oscar winner.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to keep on rolling into Africa tomorrow with Jason Reed. But until then, everybody, thank you all so much.
Wow, you did it. We're within 50 minutes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, do not vamp. I swear to God. I
was okay, because you almost caught me vamping.
We're not going. We went a little bit over the 42 days, 42-minute limit, I should say, for Survivor the Australian Outback.
All right, wrap it up while we still can. 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much again, everybody. Josh, thank you so much. This was a fantastic return.
No, thank you.
And hopefully not the last time we have you talking Survivor in some way, shape, or form.
See about it, I feel better about it than I've felt in a long time. It's exciting stuff right now.
Very exciting stuff. We'll be back with more exciting stuff tomorrow. Until then, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.